tie when he has a conflict. He wasn't sure if all the circumstances.
Wait till John comes.
Well, what John did, Christina from your office, was it Christina, she sent a memo out. She addressed an issue about a conflict of interest, but she specifically addressed the issue if a supervisor recuses himself from a vote, and that by recusing himself or herself, that made the board not have a quorum. So then the board couldn't take any action, and she explained how you could vote then. She or John didn't explain if it's a supervisor voting to break a tie on his own financial, an issue of his own financial interest. He didn't address that, or Christina didn't address that either.
That's a question to you, Tom. Can I ask why you voted for it last year, but you're adamantly opposed to it this year?
Because all the problems we had with it, with the mileage, with the issues that came up, people.
Microphone.
We had the complaints about the curbs were put in and they had to be taken out again, and I think without Gateway being the one to make the determination, we just had too many problems.
Dan, sorry to again put you on the spot. When I talked to you this morning and when I talked to you last week, you felt that it was a win-win for the township to have Frank as the assisting you, or as assisting your road inspector. Do you still feel that that's the situation? John.
Answer questions.
Yeah. Yes, they did.
You jumped right into the fire. We don't go double charge to me.
I'm just trying to do the best thing for our township, money financially, as well as the best thing for our road. So I'm asking for your professional opinion.
Well, as I stated before, and I do agree that I did tell you that it would be a win-win situation as long as we are in control of the project and we are making all the technical decisions. The decision that was made last year where there was the error made, we were not involved in that decision, and I think it was a lesson learned, and we would be very clear on that, making sure going forward that that's the way it would be handled.
I agree, and that's why the wording says an assistant road inspector to assist Gateway in the bid. Can you also clarify that if Mr. Ludwig is not the assistant road inspector, there would need to be 2 inspectors from Gateway at one at approximately $94 per hour, and another one that we came up with an estimate of approximately 82.
That is correct. I feel, and Joe can back me up on this, we would need at least 2 inspectors for the size of this project.
Okay.
And what are the qualifications?
I disagree.
of the inspectors?
I disagree. There's many days I paid with no inspector. There's many
We're not
days.
taking comments from, go
Yeah.
ahead, Dan, answer the question, please.
What are the qualifications of these experts?
I paid several days with no
Joe,
inspector.
do you want to speak?
Sure.
How many days I paid?
It's all fixed.
Yeah.
It's all fixed.
The inspector that we had out here last year, the inspector I would have out here would be a NESEP certified inspector who's capable of taking control of the job, has lots of knowledge and many years of experience. It's not going to be someone who was just hired last week to be an
Right, so
inspector.
isn't that exactly what Frank gave
It's a book right here. There it is.
So,
No, isn't that what Frank?
I gave them all the facts, Elizabeth.
okay.
Gave you all the facts.
Nice, talk to Joe.
Okay, Joe, then, if that's what you have, does Frank have these qualifications?
I don't know if Frank is a NESEP certified
So
inspector.
both inspectors would be NESEP certified?
If
both
we would have
yours
someone
first?
from Gateway, yes. We at least want to have one of them be a NESEP certified with the other one supporting them with other functions on the project.
To be honest, I'm having a hard time, and I'm not trying to put you and Dan on the spot, why, it was a win-win this morning, and it was a win-win last week, and now we're kind of backing down.
We're not backing.
We're not backing
I
down.
don't disagree. Listen, there's a lot more that goes into a project, and just let me finish. There's a lot more that goes into a project than just the inspection of the contractor. There's the administration of the contract, there's the residents to deal with, there's making sure that the board understands where your money is being spent. All of those things are helpful to have another set of eyes on the job. I don't feel, and I've been in this business for 30 years, I don't feel that that necessarily has to be a qualified NISAP inspector. As long as we have the right person watching the trucks going down, watching the asphalt that's going down, doing the density testing when that work is occurring, that other person can be out doing other things. And that's what, Cindy, that's what you and I talked about today.
So the Cecil, but is it in
About the, she ain't gonna read it. Did you say something about the blacktop being tested?
Yes.
Okay, well, what was tested last year, my friend? Did he test the?
The only thing I did last year was take temperature and check the thickness of the asphalt going down.
You didn't provide those temperatures to us.
Gateway got them all.
You got the temperatures from?
All the slips.
Well, if you got those temperatures,
Kathy took all the slips with my name on it, I signed
why
it.
are these roads falling apart?
Half road ain't falling apart.
What is it?
Half road ain't falling apart. I inspected that road. I did not.
What about South Point? What
It's
about,
falling apart.
what about all the roads that I itemized before that are falling?
Morgan Road.
Morgan Road?
really how all these
Morgan
roads
Road.
are?
Let me answer that question. Morgan Road fell apart the year before I took over. I was the one who went out there and inspected it.
But you're the one, Skip, that just said that it's falling apart now again. If there's a problem.
The issue on Morgan Road had to deal with the contractor. It had nothing to do with the township's inspection or our inspection. The contractor put cold material down against everybody's advice. He was not told not to put it down. That's why it fell apart. So.
Wait a minute, but that was the very thing that I just asked him. He said he took the temperatures. And it was, if the asphalt was too cold, we shouldn't have allowed it to be put there.
And that's what Dan just said, though, that they did it anyway against the advice of all the.
I wasn't there the first time.
And the fact
It was
is,
done again last year, and it's coming up again.
the fact is that having Frank in there could save the township some money. John, I want to ask John a question right now. Over 13,000, almost 14. John, if the vote does come to a tie on this, what does the law say about Frank being able to vote on it?
I'm not done with that, and I want to talk to him about that.
Well, after it comes up
I'm
with
not,
that.
I'm not done with discussing this. I want to discuss this a little bit further, and I forgot what my point was right now.
Well, you can bring it up in a second. Go ahead, John, while you think about it.
I provided, I think Dawn, a copy of a memo that we did actually some months ago. If you remember at the last meeting, the question arose, and I used the clock as my excuse because I couldn't remember the nuance as to when a supervisor could vote when there was a state of conflict where he would normally abstain. And the MPC provides that there is a provision where a supervisor can vote if necessary, and I questioned whether necessary meant fell below a quorum or necessary to break a tie. And it seemed like, Tom, I think you and I may have talked about that. That provision speaks to a quorum. So if it fell to less than a quorum, a supervisor could cast a vote. So that would speak to that he could not vote. However, there's case law on ethics rules, and in that particular case law, it says that if there is a tie, a supervisor who would normally abstain because of a conflict, so long as he explains the conflict, lets the vote go, declares the conflict, can break a tie in that particular instance. I provided that, Dawn, I don't know if I emailed that to the board or not.
The board received it. Matter of fact, Elizabeth and I spent some time talking about it, and we thought that maybe the memo perhaps addressed those situations only in which it prevented a quorum from being present. And we were very clear on that understanding.
Yeah, the MPCs, I agree it does. That was my hesitation. I couldn't remember if it spoke to then that ethical rule that is cited in that memo provides for, it even gives the example of a particular time, I think on a three-member board, if it's 1-1, that somebody could vote.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
So if there's a quorum, we have.
4 is a quorum.
The ability to govern, and that's what this is about, to allow us to govern.
Yeah,
we have a quorum. Therefore,
go ahead, finish your thought.
Therefore, someone with a pecuniary interest should not have the ability and does not have the ability to vote.
I agree with that, except there are two different rules at play here. There's the MPC rule and then the ethical rule where the courts have looked at the ability to vote. What you're citing was my opinion as to the MPC, that as long as we don't fall below 3, someone with a pecuniary interest shouldn't vote. And it seems to be satisfied. And then we looked at the law on the ethics rule where the courts have found that somebody that does have an interest can vote to break a tie, which seemingly, the MPC doesn't speak to when you can't vote necessarily. It just, this went a step further and provided an instance where you could vote. So that's why those are two different rules that allow for the vote.
John, if this is your position that Frank Ludwig would have the right to vote for himself to be, and receive money as a result of it, pecuniary interest, if I understand the meaning of the word, then, and if that's your position, that he can do that if it's a tie, then I'm going to ask for an opinion letter from you.
Okay. And I provided the memo, but I'll give you a letter.
No, but this is nothing. This doesn't say anything, it just gives information. It doesn't, it's not an opinion letter.
Can I just say something? The
Are
reason,
you willing to do that?
Sure.
the reason I brought this up is we don't need to pay a Gateway NESEP certified inspector to take the temperature of asphalt. And that's what Mr. Ludwig can do on behalf of the township. We can pay him at a rate of $20 per hour to.
How do you know what the rate
As
is?
an example.
The auditor sets that rate, Cindy.
You're right. As an example, it could be $15 an hour. As an example, we could pay Mr. Ludwig or an assistant road inspector to take the temperature, be the liaison between Gateway and residents, that we don't have to pay a Gateway NESEP certified engineer $82 to $97 an hour, therefore saving the township a large amount of money.
When will we receive the opinion letter, John?
I'm sorry.
When will we receive the opinion letter?
Since you just asked me a minute ago, you want it by the end of the week? That'll be okay?
Well, I just don't want any votes taken until we receive the opinion.
Well, that's up to you. That's up to you, but I can turn it around as quickly as you. I mean, the memo that we provided is basically, I know you want a different form, but that's the law that we looked at.
Well, that's what you say, but I want an opinion.
Yeah, that's fine. If you, I say give it to you by the end of the week.
Okay, that's fine. We're not going to do anything for at least another month.
Okay,
We don't have to make a decision.
John, just so I can have a clarification, I know you cited the MPC, and that's the law that we follow. Whenever we move into an area where it's an ethics issue, that's kind of guidance. So if a law speaks of it, I don't know.
Yeah, in my recollection, I don't have the memo in front of me, but my recollection was there was some law that looked at that ethics rule in that particular instance and allowed for the vote to break a tie. Because they even give the example of the one on a 3-member board, a 1-1 tie, and the third casting the vote. But I'll have to look, and when I do the opinion letter, I'll double check with PSATs too, because I believe we even call PSATs to double check all that.
I think they have an opinion in here too. I remember reading something.
Yeah, but you know what, since you're giving me some more time, but the MPC, Tom, clearly, at least in my opinion, it's not very clear in the statute, but when you look at the law, I believe it's a quorum that you lose before, because as Elizabeth said, you can govern, even at 3 members, you can govern.
Right. So
I'll look and double check as to the ethics rule versus the MPC, because I did wrestle with that when I put the opinion together as well.
Right, that's just the only second point I had. I know Ms. Fisher keeps talking about how much to save the township money if Gateway doesn't use one of their inspectors, but then we still get faced with the issues of fixing things afterwards. I mean, that costs a lot of money too. And we never got a handle on whenever our guys go back in and do things, and that's my issue.
And the thing that I would add to that is that we now have a public works director and who's on the ball with who's being done and can handle our residents. And if there are any questions, any problems, or any complaints, he's joining on the spot on this.
Bill, what would your opinion be? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, sure.
She knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just, go ahead, Bill, you can answer that if you want, we're going to move on.
I can only speak from my past